Hi everybody, it's Sarah. So yeah, I decided to jump in on my day today. I'm actually out on a pass for the night, so give, living alone, not under the supervision of psychiatric nurses 24/7, a shot, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, so things are going quite well. Slowly, but well. And yeah, so I was super psyched to get back onto Freedom Fighters, something I still really truly believe in, and I really love the topic. And I love it because I had to think really hard about it. I haven't had my parents involved in my treatment for probably well over 5 years, and we've decided that that's probably best for my situation. But, parents can be such a huge support network, and I'm well aware of that. I know a lot of people who really connect very well with their parents after their eating disorder, and they find that their parents are just an invaluable support. So, what did I come up with? Parents and families are always, they're always very, very sensitive and defensive about it being their fault. Many times they think that it's their fault. And the truth of the matter is that, they might have done something wrong, but they didn't do everything wrong. And, what you see depends on where you stand, and if you want to focus on everything they did wrong, you're not going to get that far. But if you want to focus on everything they did right, sort of look at what's wrong, what needs to be fixed, then that really goes a lot further. And there's a really sort of a distinction between fault and blame versus responsibility. And when parents are super defensive about all this, they forget that. And so I think that it would be super helpful to just be like, you know what, Mom, Dad, I know that sometimes parents of eating disorder patients get worried about, the psychological aspects of it being pointed towards them, and I know that you might worry about me thinking that this is your fault, or that my treatment team thinks this is your fault. I know that's not the case. I know that you were very well intentioned, and I know that you did your best, and you know what, that's enough, because I'm here, I want to live, and I want to live happily, and I want you to be along with me on that path. We go so far with them. For them to hear that from you would be really, really powerful. And the thing about blame and responsibility, blame has no place anywhere. Responsibility, if everyone takes what they can of the responsibility, then we all get farther. You can be responsible and take responsibility for something that was never your fault. That's definitely a very possible thing to do. Unfortunately, sometimes families do get caught in this is an attention-getting behavior. I really, really don't like that analogy. I don't think that anybody would have an eating disorder to get attention. And I know that personally I tried to fade away, and I tried to be nothing with my eating disorder, and the very last thing I wanted was it noticed. I am really not fond of that attention-getting behavior, but it probably is going to cross their mind. I would just not resist that. Just accept it as something that they don't get it. They don't understand. They don't understand that this is a psychiatric illness like everything else. Expect, to have to explain to them, if they don't understand schizophrenia or like hallucinations and hearing voices from God and whatever, then they need to be equally as open to understanding an eating disorder. It's a mental illness the same way that schizophrenia or psychotic breakdowns are. And the other thing too is if you just resist trying to, defend yourself in terms of not being an attention getter or an attention whore, as I like to call it, and just point out that if if this is what I feel compelled to do to myself to get attention, don't you think something's wrong? If you confront people with the truth like that, rather than, accusations or attacks or, verbal abuse or whatever, they're going to be backed into a corner, but not in a bad way. They're going to get it. Like, you know what, if you're doing this to get attention, then you need the attention, obviously. I like to think of it more as a sort of a way to communicate. I know that I have used my eating disorders to communicate, but not necessarily as an attention-getting tool. The other thing, too, is to point out that they're not going to understand it. They're not going to get it. You don't understand it, so you don't expect them to understand it. But you do need to expect them to accept you. The eating disorder is part of you right now. It won't be forever, but you really need for them to accept you in your entirety. And right now that means with your eating disorder. And there's a difference between acceptance and understanding. You can accept someone without understanding. Very, very possible. People do it all the time. That's what love is. And the other thing too is a lot of times treatment centers will offer psychoeducation groups or education groups for families. If you have that opportunity, like, I don't care, beg, borrow, steal a car, whatever, get them to one of those opportunities to learn about it from mental health professionals. A lot of times you can say the same thing over and over and over again and they won't ever hear you until someone else outside the family says something. That is definitely something I know I've run into, and I know that a lot of other people run into it. They just need that outside perspective. Sometimes, too, you get the idea that once you go into treatment, you're better. That's really, really optimistic. This is something that is resistant to treatment, subject to relapse, and you probably will experience regression or relapse or anything like that. And the reason they're hoping for a cure, a complete cure immediately, is not because they want for you to fail, not because they want for you to let them down. It's because they see you in a lot of pain. It's because they see you absolutely tormented by the smallest things in their perspective, and they want you happy. So they want that for you so badly that they lose sight of truth and lose sight of the fact that this is a mental illness that can be subject to relapse. Sometimes it can, it can be helpful to parallel it with addiction, if people know what addictions are. The average smoker takes 7 times to, or 7 or something like that, I don't know, don't quote me, to quit smoking. That's a really, really helpful comparison to make. It takes 7 years to recover from an eating disorder. So like that can be a really helpful comparison to make. Or something physical, like you might say you have a really, really bad stretch of migraines, and then you finally get a drug that works, and most of the time you will be fine without it, or you will be fine to manage your migraines, but once in a while they might flare up. So that's something that can kind of draw a parallel, and they might get it a bit more. The other thing too is that people don't understand the whole thing about control and eating disorders. I didn't even understand it till like 6 years in recovery. My treatment team doesn't understand it. No matter how many of us try to tell them that it is control for us, they don't get it. And especially if you develop your eating disorder in adolescence or early adulthood, the tendency for most of us is to come from under-controlled or over-controlled environments. So we really, really either needed that physical control because it wasn't there, or we were so controlled that we felt we had no control. And so our eating disorders really do feel safe and familiar, and that can be a bit of a problem, because that does feel like control, even though when you have an eating disorder you're so far out of control you're not even anywhere in the vicinity of it. The best way that I can try and describe this to someone who might not understand it is that every behavior has a neural pathway. So if you get stimulation, you think about it, and you behave. The thing about eating disorders is that that's a freeway, and that's the only pathway you've been using for a very, very long time. So it does really feel like the only way you can control anything. You've been living with this eating disorder for so long that you don't know any other pathways, and the only way you can get from point A to point B is to use this freeway, and you feel lost without being able to use this freeway.